You know, when a human threatens to lose their cool, the galaxy should listen. Carl, the regal diplomat, couldn't tell if Commander Andres was joking or if he was dead serious. It wasn't the first time a human had made this kind of offhand comment during negotiations, but there was a tone to Andres's voice that, frankly, made the temperature drop. The Galactic Council chamber was packed, delegates from dozens of species eyeing each other with the usual distrust. But today they were united in one purpose: figuring out what to do about humanity. Andres stood alone at the center, hands clasped behind his back, relaxed yet unmistakably intense. Commander Andres began, Perut, an elder representative of the Lazan order, his voice layered with the clicking accent of his people. The incidents involving human colonies across the outer sector have raised certain concerns. He paused, his mandibles twitching nervously. Some members question the appropriateness of your species' actions in response. Andres raised an eyebrow, waiting for Perut to continue, though his expression suggested he already knew what was coming. You took actions that resulted in the unfortunate disintegration of the Ethe station, Perut went on, his voice laced with unease. Several thousand were aboard, none of whom were human, and we are yet to see any indication of remorse or acknowledgement of error on your part. Andres's face remained impassive. He took a slow breath, eyes glinting. Representative Perut, he replied calmly. The Eth station launched an unprovoked assault on a civilian human outpost. They destroyed everything with no survivors. He let that sink in, watching the crowd of alien representatives shift uncomfortably. You all talk about peace, about laws and civility, yet you let this slide for every species except ours. There was a shuffling around the room, a low murmur rising as Andres's words hit their mark. The silence that followed felt tense, almost buzzing. A Zarktan delegate, covered in layers of scaled armor, raised a clawed hand. Are you suggesting that the human race intends to act outside the established laws of engagement? Andres tilted his head. Not at all, he said, but there's a line, a boundary. Every species has it. It just happens that ours was crossed a while back, and we've been more than patient. The Zarkon snorted, a puff of greenish vapor escaping his nostrils. Patience. Humans claim patience. Tell me, Commander, what does human patience mean when dozens of non-human colonies are left in ruins? Andres's eyes hardened, his jaw clenched slightly. It means, representative, he began, his tone cooling, that our actions have been restrained compared to what we're capable of. He let the words sink in, and for the first time, Caro felt a chill. Humanity's restraint was not something he'd considered before. To the other species, humans were new to the Council, a relatively young race eager to prove itself, but there had always been an undercurrent, a layer to their interactions that had never been fully understood. Another representative spoke up, a Murthan with deep, cavernous eyes that seemed to swallow the light. We still don't understand why this incident was necessary. Couldn't humanity have approached us, requested our intervention? Requested, Andres echoed, almost amused. We requested protection for years. We asked for mutual defense treaties, for anti-piracy patrols, even for a simple observer station in our sector. And what was the response? He scanned the faces of the Council. Nothing. No aid, no interest. Just rules that seemed to exist only to restrain us while the rest of you carried on as usual. Perut raised a hand again, his tone more cautious. We understand your frustration, Commander, but the destruction of the Eth station seems disproportionate. Is there not a more diplomatic solution humanity could have pursued? Andres fixed his gaze on the elder. Tell me, Representative Perut, what is the appropriate response when your civilians are slaughtered without warning? His voice softened, but there was an edge, a warning. Is there some calculation you use? some exact ratio of lives taken that makes it fair? The room fell silent. No one dared answer. Every representative present knew that, by the standards of outliers, while other races practiced restraint and negotiation to avoid confrontation, humanity's instinct to protect their own was deeply ingrained, and when they'd finally had enough, Andres took another step forward, closer to the center, making eye contact with each of the representatives. "We've adhered to the laws of the Council. We've listened to every regulation, every mandate, and we've done everything possible to show that we are reasonable, even when you didn't listen." His gaze hardened. "But if you expect us to sit back while our people are erased from existence, then you haven't been paying attention." Qatar shifted uncomfortably. In his years of serving on the Council, he had rarely seen this level of defiance. Humanity had always been assertive, yes, but this was different. There was a weariness to Andres's words, a quiet implication that the rest of the galaxy hadn't fully grasped what it was to push a species too far. The Myrthan delegate, clearly perturbed, spoke up again. "Commander Andres, are you implying that humans will continue to respond aggressively to any perceived threat?" Andres folded his arms, his face unreadable. "No," he replied evenly. "I'm saying that from now on, humanity will respond in whatever way ensures our people's safety. If that means aggressive action, then that's what it means." A new silence descended, heavier than the last. The Council members exchanged glances, and Qatar could see the unease on their faces. It was no secret that the galaxy's most powerful species had assumed that humanity would fall in line, that they would adhere strictly to the Council's expectations. But now it was becoming clear that their patience had limits. Perut hesitated before speaking again. "We are not accustomed to this kind of response from Council members. We ask that humanity exercise restraint in any future conflicts." Andres nodded. "We will exercise restraint when restraint is warranted, but we will not hesitate to act decisively when threatened. You may call it what you want, but it's simply self-preservation." A faint, bitter chuckle escaped the Zarkon representative, though his voice was tense. Self-preservation or a challenge to the Council? "Neither," Andres said, meeting the Zarktan's gaze. "It's a warning, one that's long overdue." He turned, looking over the assembly of alien faces. "The galaxy has assumed our tolerance was endless, that we would endure quietly. But humanity has reached its threshold. There will be no more tolerance for attacks, no more looking the other way while our people suffer." Another ripple of murmurs passed through the hall, the realization settling in. Humanity was done waiting for approval, done bending over backward to be seen as part of the Council's civilized order. Qatar couldn't help but feel a pang of concern. He had observed humans from the start, witnessed their adaptability, their resilience, and now he understood, perhaps too late, that they possessed something far more dangerous. The tension in the Council chamber only grew. Each species had its own way of processing threats, and the idea of an outright warning was deeply unsettling to many of the representatives. To them, diplomacy was synonymous with decorum, with holding back. But here was humanity, not posturing, not issuing empty threats, just calmly declaring the end of its patience. After Andres's speech, the representatives shifted uneasily. A ripple of confusion crossed Qatar's mind, reflecting the general unease. He had been an observer of humanity's journey since they'd first joined the Council. At first, he'd been fascinated by their curiosity, their rapid advancements, their strange customs, but now he felt he'd barely scratched the surface of what humans could do. The Council head, a tall, translucent, segmented ion named Chair, spoke up, his voice resonating through the chamber. "Commander Andres, you have made your position clear. However, such declarations could destabilize our collective peace. His long, slender arms extended in a gesture meant to convey calm. Surely we can find a compromise that respects humanity's needs without undermining the Council's authority. Andres sighed, and for the first time Qatar noticed the exhaustion in his eyes. He looked like a man who'd been fighting battles far beyond the reach of this chamber, battles that had taken a toll on his people in ways the Council couldn't imagine. "Chair," he began slowly, "we have always sought peace, but peace without security is a hollow concept." A Marian delegate, shifting in agitation, clicked his long claws together. "Is there no way for humanity to assure its safety without resorting to these aggressive measures?" Andres's gaze hardened, though his tone remained steady. "We tried that. Remember? Years of negotiation, treaties, agreements, all under the Council's protection. Yet, time after time, when our colonies were attacked, you told us to wait, to be patient." He paused, scanning the faces around him. "And we waited. We buried our dead and rebuilt, but patience has limits." Qatar felt a prickle of realization. Humanity's anger wasn't born of ambition or greed. It was the fury of a species that had been ignored, dismissed, and underestimated. He glanced around and saw his fellow representatives struggling to understand this perspective. For most of them, war was ancient history, a relic of a less civilized era. But humans had risen from conflict. Their history was filled with trials, tests, and survival against all odds. Qatar wondered if the galaxy had ever truly considered the resilience bred into them. One of the Council's senior diplomats, a hulking feathered Tovani named Aaron, fluffed his silvered feathers in a show of unease. "Perhaps it is not just about defending your colonies, Commander. Perhaps humanity feels it has something to prove." Andres chuckled, though there was no warmth in it. "Prove? We have nothing to prove. We're not here to show the galaxy how strong or dangerous we are. We're here to protect our people, and if that protection requires force, then that's what it requires." Perut, the Yian, raised a clawed hand in a plea for understanding. "Commander Andres, surely you can see the Council's perspective. Such retaliation breeds retaliation. The cycle could continue indefinitely, destabilizing our shared galaxy." Andres looked at him sharply. "There's no cycle here, Representative. The cycle exists only because humanity has been holding back, while others have taken advantage of our restraint. We simply want that restraint acknowledged and respected, not ignored." Qatar realized, with an odd sense of dread, that humanity had not been playing the same game as the other species. For most of the Council, power and influence were currencies to be traded, tools used with caution. But for humanity, the stakes were far more personal. A Triaxian representative, her scales glimmering in the dim light, spoke up, her voice filled with calculated diplomacy. "We are all part of this Council, Commander, and as such, we must trust each other. If one member, any member, chooses to act outside of agreed protocol, the very foundation of our unity is at risk." Andres's gaze held steady, unyielding. Unity requires more than trust. It requires accountability. Humanity has asked for aid, for mutual protection, for recognition of its rights. But time and time again, we were met with indifference. He spread his hands, voice rising ever so slightly. "What do you call unity when one part is expected to sacrifice and endure without reward?" His words lingered in the air, leaving an uncomfortable silence. The delegates glanced at one another, their expressions a mixture of confusion, guilt, and growing fear. For the first time, they seemed to understand that humanity wasn't seeking domination or territory. They were simply done with a system that left them vulnerable. The Atherin chair, sensing the change in the room, leaned forward, his eyes narrowing thoughtfully. "Then tell us, Commander, What does humanity seek from this council now? Andres took a deep breath, his expression softening, though his resolve remained firm. We seek what every species here values, a guarantee of safety, of security. And if that guarantee cannot be upheld by this council, then humanity will provide it for itself. Qatar's heart sank. This wasn't a declaration of war, but it was close enough. It was a statement that humanity was ready to stand alone, if needed. Qatar doubted many in the council had anticipated this. To them, humans were still a young, vibrant species, eager to prove their worth. But now they were seeing a different side, one that was weary, hardened, and no longer willing to ask for permission. Aaron, the Tavani, tilted his head, his eyes narrowing in thought. And if the council does not support this independence? Andres looked at him, calm but unyielding. Then it will do what it must. We would rather not be alone in this galaxy, but we will survive with or without the council's help. A murmur spread through the assembly as the weight of his words sank in. Qatar could feel the alien leaders grappling with a mixture of outrage and unease. It was one thing to see humanity as an ally, a species bound by the same codes and rules as the rest of the galaxy, but this was different. Chair lifted his arms again, his segmented fingers trembling. Surely there is no need for such ultimatums, Commander. We can find a path forward, one that respects humanity's needs without compromising the stability of this council. Andres's expression remained unchanged. I hope you're right, Chair. Humanity doesn't want to go to war with anyone here. But if our people are threatened again, we won't hesitate to respond. The council fell silent, absorbing the quiet but undeniable finality in Andres's words. Qatar felt the realization settling in around him that humanity, while willing to cooperate, was done with compromise. The galaxy had taken their patience for granted, and now they were seeing a species that would stand for itself if pushed. For the first time in his life, Qatar felt fear, not just for what humanity might do if provoked, but for what the galaxy had created by underestimating them. The tension hung thick in the council chamber, so palpable it felt like a solid weight pressing on every representative. For a moment it seemed that no one dared to speak, but finally the silence was broken by the quiet, measured voice of Commander Andres. Let me be clear, Council, Andres began, his tone resolute. Humanity has no desire for dominance, no interest in a throne among the stars. What we seek is simple, the right to exist, to protect our own without interference. If we are to remain in this council, our needs must no longer be secondary. Perut, the Yian elder, spoke cautiously but surely. Commander, you must see that unity requires compromise. If every species were to take matters into their own hands, there would be no need for a council at all. Andres nodded, acknowledging the point. And yet, Representative, what does unity mean if it's only enforced by words with no action? How many human colonies have to fall before we're allowed to defend ourselves as necessary? The delegates exchanged nervous glances, each realizing the gravity of the question. The Galactic Council had always been an experiment, a patchwork of species with different histories, different values, attempting to build something resembling peace. But now, faced with humanity's breaking point, they were forced to confront the fractures within their own vision. A low, grumbling voice interrupted the murmuring. It was the Zarkton representative, scales bristling, his deep-set eyes glaring at Andres. And suppose the Council agrees to this autonomy, Commander? What then? How can we trust that humanity will not abuse it? Andres held the Zarkton's gaze. Trust is a two-way street. Humanity has been told to trust this council for years, and we've paid the price for that trust. All we ask now is the right to act as any other species would in our situation. Chair lifted his elongated fingers. the shimmer of his translucent skin catching the light. "Commander Andress, this is no small request. It challenges the very foundation of our unity. If we are to grant humanity this level of independence, then it must be understood that this decision is final. Humanity would be bound by its choices." Andress gave a slight nod. "Understood." Chair Qatar watched as the representatives weighed their options. For many of them, the thought of allowing a species to act independently within the Council was unthinkable, but humanity had forced them into a corner, leaving no easy escape. They had two choices: acknowledge humanity's autonomy or risk a schism that could unravel the very fabric of the Council. After a long, tense pause, Chair turned to address the Assembly. "Then let us vote." The display screens around the room lit up, each representative casting their vote. It was a rare and solemn moment in the Council's history. As the numbers slowly appeared on the screen, a murmur rippled through the chamber. The final tally was undeniable. Humanity would be granted the autonomy it sought. Andress let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding, though his expression remained calm. Qatar saw a flicker of relief in his eyes. "Thank you, Chair. Humanity will honor this decision, as we have honored our commitments to this Council." But just as the relief began to settle over the room, the Zarkan representative leaned forward, his eyes gleaming with a newfound sense of challenge. "Commander, this autonomy you seek, let's hope it does not lead to further incidents. If humanity's actions become a threat to the stability of the galaxy, know that there will be consequences." Andress met his gaze, unflinching. "Understood, Representative. But if anyone threatens the lives of our people again, know that we will respond. No hesitation, no waiting." The words hung in the air, and it was clear to everyone that Andress wasn't making a threat. He was stating a promise. As the session drew to a close, Andress walked out of the chamber, his footsteps echoing in the massive hallways of the Council building. Qatar followed, catching up to him outside, his mind racing with questions. "Commander Andress," Qatar called, his voice a mixture of respect and curiosity. "May I ask, did humanity ever truly believe the Council would protect you?" Andress stopped, his gaze distant as he considered the question. "We hoped it would," he admitted, a hint of sadness in his voice. "For a long time we believed that maybe, just maybe, we'd found a place in the galaxy where strength wouldn't have to be our only shield. But hope fades when reality proves harsher." Qatar nodded, feeling an unexpected pang of understanding. "So that's why you decided to make this stand?" Andress nodded, a faint smile playing on his lips. "We tried everything else, Qatar. We negotiated, waited, even sacrificed. But at some point, every species has a breaking point. Today, humanity reached ours." He had underestimated humanity's resilience, their tenacity, and their willingness to stand alone. They had shown a strength that many species would never understand. Perhaps it was because humans didn't seek dominance, didn't strive for conquest. They only fought when they were forced to defend what mattered most. As Andress turned to leave, Qatar called out once more, "Commander, what will you do now?" Andress paused, glancing over his shoulder. "What we've always done, Qatar. We'll protect our people, build a future for them, even if we have to do it alone." He turned away, his footsteps fading into the distance. Qatar watched him go, a strange respect blossoming within him. He realized that he had witnessed something historic, a moment the galaxy would never forget. Today, humanity had drawn a line that would ripple across every corner of the stars. They had taught the Council a lesson that would be carved into the annals of history. The breaking point had arrived, and with it, the galaxy would never look at humanity the same way again. And that's it for today's journey through the stars. But the adventure doesn't have to end here. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to hit that like button. It helps us reach even more explorers like you. Have a thought, a theory, or just want to say hi? Drop a comment below. Your voice is part of what makes this universe so special, and if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe and join our ever-growing crew of stargazers. There's so much more to explore, and you won't want to miss a moment of it. Until next time, keep dreaming, keep exploring, and keep reaching for the stars.